As the world of sports continued to grow and develop, a few years ago, the world suddenly stopped in the form of COVID-19.
What do you think the phrase COVID-19 means to you?
To me, it really kind of brings me back to a scary time, unprecedented times. Never lived through anything like that in my life.
It was one of those things where you just had to learn how to live with it, right? Because it was out there, but you couldn't completely shut everything down. I mean, there were reasons to leave your house or do that kind of thing.
Realistically, to me, it's just another sickness. People call it a disease, which by technicality it is a disease, but I just find it more of like another influenza type of thing.
Just destruction. It was a pandemic. It caused a lot of problems athletically, socially, emotionally for a lot of people.
How do you think COVID-19 has affected you personally?
Personally, I feel really, really grateful and really fortunate.
I got a mild version of it, so actually physically having it wasn't that fun, but it wasn't, nearly as scary as what I thought it would be.
Personally, it's affected me not a lot, but enough to where it takes notice of like things that I enjoy doing.
For me personally, I got lucky that it didn't hit me in high school, but I will say it made a big decision from my transfer in college.
And even though the pandemic has affected many athletes worldwide, the one athletes to think about in particular are the ones that are in college.
How do you believe COVID-19 has affected college athletes playing for different colleges worldwide?
It's done a lot of really tight scheduling since they need to, one, like test people, and two, they need to make sure like these athletes don't get sick, and if they do, they need to spread them off and make sure it doesn't spread more.
After our last regular season Iowa Lakes game, they canceled the season. And that was the first thing,
There are some athletes here on campus who are like in their third year of extended NCAA eligibility, which means they might be 22, 23, 24 years old.
In your opinion, what do you think are some major challenges that these college athletes have had to go through during the pandemic?
Well, for a lot of these college athletes, athletics is their whole life.
One of the biggest things I think of in the sports world for COVID-19 is the atmosphere on game day.
For them to not be able to play in front of fans when we did come back to school at the beginning of 2020 and 2021, the basketball season was delayed, and then when it started, no fans were allowed in there.
For athletes in particular, I think not having friends and family able to come watch you play is probably the biggest challenge.
What do you think is probably the hardest thing seeing or reading about when these college athletes were dealing with COVID-19 with their games that they're going for?
I think the hardest thing would be just figuring out if they're actually gonna play.
Another thing was sometimes having games canceled because the other team had an outbreak of COVID.
You could feel for the athletes, especially if you're around the program, parents especially, you feel for them. They have games are getting canceled, maybe their seasons are getting cut short. I think as a fan, not only can you maybe not watch a son or daughter play, but just if you're a part of the community, I think, it would just be a tough thing to go through.
What do you think would be positive about, these college athletes going through COVID-19?
I think a lot of things that were taken away from us, when we got to have them back, you appreciated them.
Honestly, just going back after like restrictions, after just coming back to practice.
When you are quarantined or separated from everyday life, I feel like you can really introspect and kind of get to know yourself a little bit more when you're isolated like that.
I would imagine many of them were working on their own personal fitness and their own personal skills, so I would think that perhaps some of them came back out of COVID even stronger.
Is there any final thoughts you want to give? Any advice you want to give to the college athletes? Anything you want to give to anyone struggling with COVID-19?
Just do what you like doing, whether that is a sport or if you realize during COVID that the sport's not all that what it was made up to be for you. Quit it. If you feel miserable coming back, just quit it. Like, find something that you enjoy doing, whether it is another sport or a hobby that you did pick up over the pandemic.
I am glad to see things returning a little bit back to how they were pre-pandemic.
Yesterday is only a memory, so take advantage of what you have that's in front of you right now.
Hit a lot of people hard. Like hopefully we're on, the rise back up from COVID, but obviously, we're still aware of its effects. It was a tough one, man. Definitely a life changer for sure.